The 2021 Jeep Wrangler 4xE. Let's get started here. There are many things to cover with this new Wrangler. I'm not going to cover too much of the obvious like the exterior because, well, this is an icon, okay? Everybody knows it, everybody loves it, everybody wants it. So I'm not going to cover too much of the exterior. You know what it looks like. It's a Jeep. They haven't really changed it. I will mention one quick thing for you. If you're confused between the JK Wranglers and these new generation JLs, what the main difference is exterior wise, so you can tell them apart, just look at the headlights. They kind of indent into the front grille there, so that's kind of one of the ways that you can tell the difference between the JK and these JLs. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and let's talk about what this vehicle is. And what it is, well, it's a plug-in hybrid, the most technologically advanced Jeep Wrangler ever produced. Some people like it, some people don't care, some people just want to lease it and take advantage of those little federal credits, if you will, right? I'm going to try and break this down and try to give you my opinion on it, if it's worth it. Because there is one great advantage of this plug-in hybrid versus the 4-cylinder turbo and the V6 options, both the diesel or the Pentastar V6, okay? And that is when you floor it all the way, my gosh, man, this thing picks up speed extremely well. So that's a major highlight right there, okay? 375 horsepower and 470 pound-feet of torque. That's combined, okay? With the hybrid battery pack, you got yourself a 2-liter turbocharged engine underneath the hood. And with those battery packs, that is some serious thrust that you're going to be getting in here. Now, of course, you do have a 392 6.4-liter V8 option. That's going to cost you around $75,000 to $80,000. But that's technically the quickest Wrangler that you can get right now. Ridiculous, overpriced, I admit, but that is going to net you about 4.5 seconds, 0 to 60, 470 horse, 470 pounds-feet of torque. So an equal amount of torque to this hybrid. This will do 0 to 60 in about 6 seconds. Some have tested this to be even as quick as 5.5 seconds, 0 to 60. So, as I mentioned, a very quick machine. But this weighs a lot more, okay? 5,200 pounds is the curb weight of this Wrangler. And that's on average about 800 pounds more than a standard 4-cylinder or V6 offering of the Wranglers. And it also costs $10,000 more than your typical 4-cylinder or V6 if you were to equip it with the same amount of options, roughly. As stickered here, this is about $62,000, and that's where most people are kind of turned off by this 4xE, because MSRP price, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But I'm going to make it make sense for you, because you should not be financing these things or even paying cash for it. You should be leasing it. Even if you were to get a regular Jeep Wrangler, I think you should be leasing it, honestly. If you were to get the standard engines in a Rubicon trim, try and lease that. The only time you should try and finance something like this or even pay cash for it is if you want to get like the base model Sport S for around 32 grand for the 4-door Unlimiteds, and you want to put your own custom wheels and tires on there and your own suspension, then sure, I can maybe see why you'd want to get that base model and finance it if you want to keep it for a long term. But with the 4xE, you should definitely try to lease it. It's just the best way. It's around $460 a month on Lease Hacker without any money down. That's really the best way to take advantage of it. But let's go ahead and let's merge onto the highway and let's transition over into some of these driving aspects. This thing deserves a lot more credit than what it gets with its on-road driving dynamics, because we know it's a legend off-road. We know that already, okay? The damn thing is called the Rubicon, okay? This is the Rubicon trim. The off-road capability is not to be disputed. Let's see here. When I first got into this vehicle for the first time, driving it on the highway was certainly a little sketch. Not particularly in a straight line like this, okay? It's only when you're making lane changes, when some douchebag decides to just cut you off, when sudden things like that happen, that's the only time when you're thrown off guard a little bit. But for the most part, let me tell you this, I've driven a 2019 JL when it first came out off camera, and it was the 4-cylinder model, and this is noticeably better than that Sport S Wrangler that I drove before. I think some of that has to do with the fact that this is 800 pounds heavier. So that's one advantage to getting this hybrid, okay? Outside of the power, outside of the fact that it can do about 25 miles of pure electric driving. This is also the Rubicon, okay? It has a 10.8 inch ground clearance, so obviously it sits up a little bit higher, but it's a little bit chunkier, okay? You got yourself 285 tires in all 4 corners, the width I mean, and these are 17-inch wheels. The sidewall is 70. That's a size rating. As you just saw there, the wind noise, the tire noise, it's certainly on the higher side. Okay, this is a Wrangler. You should know what you're getting into here, but it's not as bad as you would think. The JL Wrangler as a whole is far superior than any of the previous generation Wranglers, okay, by a long shot. This is like a luxury car in comparison to something like the JK Wranglers. Everything from its on-road demeanors, like ride quality, quietness, everything. I have this vehicle over a very jittery road here, and yeah, of course, the smaller bumps are going to translate into the cabin. You're going to feel it a little bit, but it's not terrible. It's not going to totally beat you up in this. In fact, it actually absorbs the larger bumps extremely well. This utilizes a solid axle both in the front and the rear. Okay, it's also got Dana 44 axles because this is the Rubicon. But okay, the kind of handling around town is, dare I say, even nimble. Most people don't give the Wrangler, especially the JL Wranglers, enough credit in terms of its everyday street driving. Like 40 miles an hour and under driving, okay? Every kind of right hand, even the left-hander turns that you make in this, it's easy to place out on the road. There's actually not a crazy amount of body roll or anything like that going on in here. I drove a Bronco Sport, the one that's based upon the Escape, and that one had even more body roll than this big ass Wrangler. So keep that in mind. This isn't a terrible driving experience. And despite the performance capabilities in a straight line, the fact that, you know, you floor it and you do get immense speed, that's not really the best way to drive this thing. I don't like driving this thing foot to the floor, and you do have to drive it foot to the floor to get all of the thrust that this powertrain has to offer you. Okay, this 8-speed automatic transmission combined with this hybrid powertrain, you have to drive it foot to the floor to get maximum power and speed, because if you just drive it half throttle like a normal person would, it does feel a little bit more lethargic. Okay, it takes some time for the engine and everything to kick in. So do I mind that? Absolutely not, because as I was about to describe to you, the best way to drive this is slowly, half throttle. That's not to take away from the fact that this is a decent driving vehicle. It's the best driving Wrangler that's ever existed. But I've spent a whole day in this thing just driving it in a variety of settings, both on the highway, both in the city driving with the top off, everything, right? And in the whole day that I've driven it, I was not fatigued in it. I really actually enjoyed myself. I can actually see myself daily driving a Wrangler, especially a JL. I don't know how people manage to drive the older models. That's beyond me. But I was most happy driving the Wrangler in the city, where douchebags were doing 15 miles an hour under the speed limit, right? And they're all kind of brake checking each other, kind of like how they are right now. And I found myself to really enjoy it in that setting. The Wrangler is so much fun to drive at around 35, 40 miles an hour on the street. And when you're on the highway, as I mentioned, it's only when you're making lane changes or sudden maneuvers where it feels a little sketch. When you're just in a straight line, in the right lane, it's really fine. The steering is nice and smooth, and of course there's not much feedback because you got these big chunky sidewalls with these BF Goodrich KO2 tires on it, so it feels kind of mushy, but again, it feels satisfactory in a strange way. These truck-like products, they are kind of fun to drive on the street. Now let's talk about some other important aspects here. Okay, the fuel economy, those types of things. It's rated to get 49 mpges. That's what it's rated for. You're not going to be getting that. Most normal people are not going to be getting that. And I have charged this thing up completely. It takes about 12 hours to charge it up fully on a 120 volt charging system, which if you buy a Wrangler 4xE, you will be getting a 120 volt charger with the vehicle. You'll get that free of charge. If you want a 240 volt charger, you're gonna have to pay up for that from Mopar. Okay, they do sell it, but it's about 650 bucks, and that's a lot of money, but you will be able to fully charge this thing in about 2 hours. And you know, you can drive this thing in full electric mode for 25 miles, and I have driven it like that, and I do like that mode. You will only be getting 134 horsepower if you drive it in the full electric mode, so it's not going to be quick. And here, I'll kind of switch it over here because I do have 11 miles of range left in it. And if I floor it, the engine does kick in. So if you need more power, the engine's going to kick in, but Jeep does claim that you can drive it up to highway speeds, but you're going to have to be pretty mellow with the throttle. And if you live close to work, this can make sense. And if you lease it, like I mentioned in the beginning, and you don't use any fuel, I don't see why you wouldn't want to opt for this package, because as I mentioned, this is best used and best driven slowly, okay, not foot to the floor. So you take advantage of the full electric mode, you take advantage of any federal incentives like that 7,500 bucks that you can get back, and the cheaper lease deals that you can get. That's how this makes sense. Now, if you are driving it like a regular hybrid, okay, with the engine cutting in and out, this is actually going to get worse fuel economy than a regular 4-cylinder turbo of the Wrangler, so keep that in mind. And when I did drive it hard in a hybrid mode setting, I was getting around 15 mpgs. And I'll be honest, if you're going to drive the other engines hard, I'm sure you're probably going to get around that same type of mpgs as well, but you won't be able to drive it in this full electric mode. One of the reasons why this doesn't get as good a fuel economy on paper anyways, because it weighs 800 pounds more. But as I mentioned, I think that's a highlight. I think that's a benefit of the hybrid Wranglers, because I find it to be a little bit more stable at speeds. Now, I'm going to close out with some subjective things before we get into the interior segment. There's a brotherhood going on with the Wrangler. It's the people's vehicle. When other Wranglers see you, they wave at you. I love it. It makes your day. This is clearly a compromised vehicle. I get it. You can just get a regular SUV, and it would be better than this, but it'll never be a Wrangler. And you have other competitors like the Broncos and other vehicles that are trying to mimic what the Wrangler has always done, but it'll never have the kind of fan base and the love that the Wrangler gets. I'm telling you, people love you in this thing. Other truck drivers, they really appreciate the Wrangler. They're always kind of looking at it. This thing gets a lot of attention, I'm not going to lie. It's a Rubicon. It sits chunky. It's got a nice look to it. It looks good in just about any color choice. And speaking of colors, if you want to quiet this vehicle down further than what it already is, this is manageable with the cloth top as you see it here. But if you wanted to get it even quieter than this, just get the hard top and you can get a color match. Now that's like a $2,500 option, I believe. It's pretty expensive to get that, but I think it's worth it. And I personally like that look a little bit better. So seeing those Jeep people wave at you, it's a fun thing, right? It makes your day. It's the freedom vehicle. You know, this is a cloth top. It's easier than ever now to take the top off in this because it has like this new railing system. You can take the door off and throw it at the car next to you if you want. You can stick your whole head out the roof here like the Pope. You want to play Pope, you can do that. You can let your foot hang. You can leave everything hang. And it's just a cool, fun driving experience that I don't think many other vehicles can match or even replicate, really. The other vehicles like the Broncos, I haven't driven it yet. I hope to get a chance to here shortly, but I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to take this formula and try to make it a little bit more daily drivable. Well, honestly, I don't really want them to do that. I kind of want Jeep to maintain this vehicle as it is. I think that's where it's most fun. Vehicles that are a little bit more compromised, that aren't perfect, are fun to drive on the street. But anyway, I think I've shared enough of my driving experience, my thoughts, some specs for you. Let's go ahead and let's transition over into the interior segment now. Okay, let's quickly cover this interior space because this is another fun aspect of the Wrangler. They have a pretty cool driving position in these things. It's kind of squared out. I've driven I know this is pretty ridiculous to compare it to, but I've driven a Mercedes G-Wagon, the G63, and the seating position in both of these vehicles are very similar. Okay, these are kind of these military-esque or military-based vehicles, right? That's what it is. And it has like this square, flat driving position, and it does. You feel like you're operating some type of military vehicle in this. It's pretty cool, and you get used to it pretty easily, I think, and it's rather easy to place out on the road. The turning radius of this is really short, so making U-turns and everything is really quite easy in this, so that really pleased me. But one thing is, I would like them to implement electric seats, at least in the front for the driver's seat anyway, because this thing has some luxury touches. Like I mentioned, this is $62,000 and it's got a heated steering wheel, heated seats, so we're not trying to save any weight here. Anyway, just something I would like to throw out there. But the mirrors are a good size. The rear view mirror, it's got a bezel-less feature to it, so you can actually see plenty out of this thing. The blind spots, it's all well contained in here. It's an easy vehicle to drive. Got yourself automatic headlights, one touch down windows just for the front two windows here, and it will not go up one touch, so that's kind of weird and stupid, but it's just something I noticed. And of course the window switches are in the center console here. And let me tell you about the center console and this interior as a whole. It's solid in here. I like the build quality, I like the material choices, and of course, yes, it's plastic. It's predominantly plastic in here, and that's okay, that's fine. It's got a similar build quality to the Toyota products, like their Tundras, the 4Runners, etc., and even the new Bronco Sport I just checked out. All these interiors, the thing that they have in common is, despite them using a lot of plastics, it's solid in here. This vehicle has about 7,000 miles on it, and there's no crazy creaks and rattles in here. It's well done, it's well finished, it's got some interesting textures, and I like the blue stitching that we have going on here. It kind of matches the blue stickers that we have on the exterior. You got the excellent 8.4-inch Uconnect system, easy to use. Apple CarPlay, Android Auto. Stellantis has some of the best technology out there, and the screen quality is also excellent. You have separated buttons here for your climate control. You do have to look up at the screen to see your temperature and the kind of fan speeds, but other than that, it's all super simple to use. Got your USB, your USB-C, and your aux connectivity here in the media center of the center console. The auxiliary controls, those are an extra option, but I would recommend that if you want to modify this and put some light bars on here, etc. You got your off-road controls here, because this is the Rubicon, so you can disconnect your sway bars front and rear if you would like. Now obviously that's only for off-road use. Don't do that for city driving or street driving. You disconnect the sway bars to get yourself some better articulation when you go off-road, but anyway, most people don't need to screw with that. And you have your 4x4 controls as well. For everyday driving on the street, on the pavement, you're going to be using the 2H, the rear wheel drive setting, of course. You also have a 4x4 automatic, which use that in inclement weather situations, like in snow, or if you're going uphill and there's some gravel on the road or something like that. Go ahead and use that 4x8, but for the most part, you don't want to use the 4x4 automatic even on the dry pavement. Okay, there's no real use to it. It's not the safest. Use the rear wheel drive. You'll also get better fuel economy, of course. Telescoping steering wheel, it's leather wrapped. It's a great thing to grip onto. You also have some volume controls and track selection controls behind the steering wheel, so that's kind of where Jeep/Stellantis puts those controls at. And on your left side here, you can control your hybrid, your electric modes, your e-save mode, so you can kind of operate on the engine only. The seats themselves, okay, these are the leather seats, and they are pretty damn comfortable. Like I mentioned, I spent a whole day in this, and I was not fatigued. I really was not. Your center armrest provides some support for your elbow, of course, and also you can open it up two ways, and you have a little Jeep pouch which has some tools, I believe, to take off the doors. Actual space inside the storage is also immense, and you also have a USB connectivity in there as well. Now the rear seats, because this is the Jeep Unlimited, right? It's the 4-door, and it's the one I recommend for a couple of reasons. Practicality, but also an extended wheelbase vehicle like this performs better out on the highway, okay? You're going to be getting some better stability. I have never driven a 2-door Wrangler. I don't really want to. I don't really care. But trust me, I don't think it'll be as smooth or the ride quality will be as good in the 2-door Wranglers. And of course, the stability out on the highway will also not be as good. But I get it. If you're really an off-road freak and you really love off-roading, The two-door Wrangler is probably easier to place on a trail or whatever. So I mean, if you want to get it, but this is the model I recommend because you can also put more people back there. Granted, it's difficult to get in and out of this thing. It's a little bit constricted. Again, it's compromised. You're going to be 6 feet and under if you're going to fit back there in the rear seats, even in this 4-door model. The Alpine sound system in here sounds like a tin can. Don't even opt for it. It's not even worth it. And honestly, I don't really care about the audio system in a vehicle like this. It really doesn't matter to me. So save your money, get the regular audio system, and you should be fine. Now let's talk about the trunk space because, well, you certainly have a spare tire back there, that's for sure. And you want that spare tire. And I'm glad that the way they have it mounted, it doesn't really take up a whole lot of your visibility. It's actually still rather easy to drive. You of course have a backup camera. Anyway, you open it up sideways. That's how it opens. You still have like that plastic flap back there. So you don't have all the access to your trunk, right? It's not very easy to get large items back there unless you remove the plastic flap in the rear. Fortunately, it does just slide out, but putting it back in is a little bit of a fiasco. You can also lift up the little cargo cover and you have some more storage space. And you can fold down the seat 60-40, but there will be a little hump, if you will. It won't be a flat load surface with the seats down. It's a Wrangler. You know what you're buying with this thing. You know exactly what this thing is all about, okay? This thing has existed for 1,000 years now, virtually unchanged. But if you own an older Wrangler, you owe it to yourself to get this new one. Because the resale value of these things is incredible. You can buy a new Wrangler, you can lease a new Wrangler, and you're always going to be in the green. You can just trade it in after a year. It really doesn't matter. It's significantly better than the previous generation cars. It's like a luxury car compared to the older Wranglers. I'm not even an off-road freak. I'm not a Wrangler freak by any means, but I had such a fun time driving this thing around for a week. It was just a great experience, and I can see why so many people love it. And if you're in the market for one, check out the Bronco for sure. I mean, I know that's going to take a lot of market share away from this, but as I mentioned before, dude, nothing is ever going to replace a Wrangler, and I hope Stellantis doesn't change this thing too much. Hopefully you found value with this review. Hopefully it makes sense to you. Hopefully you know where I stand with this financially. The Wrangler is always going to be a smart buying decision because it just never drops in value. You can pretty much sell for exactly what you've purchased it for like a year down the road, especially if you get like a Rubicon as you see it here. So have fun shopping. Thanks for watching. Take care and goodbye.